Is anybody here from Microsoft who can help? So while she's pulling that up, on behalf of Microsoft and all of our employees who quickly turn into volunteers whenever there's a natural disaster, thank you for the opportunity to be here and present what we do. In fact, one of the folks that's going to come up in a minute and talk is actually one of our employees who saw a need, created an innovation, and ultimately we're now announcing this as a proactive solution we have to deploy for natural disasters. Much like the previous folks have mentioned, we focus on what we can do before a disaster, not what we can do after. Certainly we need to do things after, and we support emergency responders and everyone, individuals after a disaster, but it's in preparation, it's in building resilience where the real impact that we can make. From our point of view, what we do is we focus on how we can help both organizations and individuals. We do this in 3 areas. The first thing is with technology. Microsoft has lots of products, lots of technology, a lot of capabilities. How do we create the right kind of licenses and the right kind of capabilities so we can deploy those technologies quickly and without cost to those that are impacted? We do this both for response organizations such as yourselves, as well as our customers, our partners, and companies who aren't our customers. Because we know as soon as those individual businesses can get up and running, then the neighborhoods, the communities can get back up and running. The next thing we do is we use our consulting services, our technical expertise, to help people restore systems, help people build new systems in time of response, and also create systems that scale much farther than they need. The last thing we do is focus on how do we take our web presence, how do we take our employees, our partners, and our customers, and help them understand where are the needs, where are the response organizations, the nonprofits, and how do we take the generosity of everybody who's looking to donate time, looking to donate goods, and looking to donate money, and get that to the right place. As I mentioned, we're going to talk today about what we're doing with a new offering in our portfolio of those rapidly deployable solutions. So Mark Magolis is going to come up and talk about how he started finding a solution and ultimately turning it into something that we proactively can deploy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Margolis, and I'm from Microsoft in the UK. I'm here today to talk to you about the power of social communities, of online social networks, in helping the rehabilitation of survivors in the event of a disaster. I'm here today to talk to you about this picture you see behind me and about the story that led to me having this picture taken a couple of months ago. On the 7th of July 2005, on my way to work, a suicide bomber detonated his rucksack a few feet away from me, killing 26 people. In the following days, I tried to make sense of what was happening to me. I tried to make sense of my thoughts and my feelings. And so, with other survivors, I created an online community such that we had a place to go to offer help, get access to information. This online community enables people to post messages, like messages, collaborate together, work together on complicated medical forms. For survivors, it quickly became our rock, the place that we would go to get access to information. For survivors, it gave us an opportunity to give back to those that needed it. After the Boston Marathon bombing, I immediately saw where I could help. And I called up the Boston Public Health Service and immediately offered the Yammer network for them. And it was a real privilege for me to go and visit firsthand and see firsthand the benefit that it provided the survivors of the Boston bombing. And it was that evening that I was invited to a fundraiser that I will remember for the rest of my life, and I got a chance to meet first responders and survivors as well. And I think this picture perfectly represents the power of technology and its ability to bring people together in the face of a disaster. What you'll see here on my hands are the words, "We're not afraid," which was a social term that came out shortly after 9/11, a way that the City of London came together to show solidarity. On the right there, you'll see Dave with the words Boston Strong. Again, another social term showing the strength of the City of Boston coming together at such an awful time. And in the middle is Jeremy from the Boston Public Health Service, an administrator of the social network, with the words Yammer, the technology that brought us all together. Thank you very much. I'd like to bring up Dave to tell you a little bit more about his usage of Yammer.
Hey, thank you, guys. I was injured at the site of the first explosion in Boston at the marathon. And after everything happened, I was very quiet. And all of us, many of the survivors that day, were inundated with emails, all very well-wishing and wishing to help. But a lot of the messages got lost in those days and in those weeks and in the couple of months that preceded after the bombings. And for us, we had we formed a support group. Several of the folks that had similar injuries. I've lost some hearing. I have some shrapnel wounds, and I was able to connect with others that were injured in a similar way through the use of Yammer. When it was introduced about 4 months after, we were able to connect with people that are around the country that were there that day. Folks that were injured in a similar way. I think one of the biggest things we've been able to see is we've been able to collaborate with each other through utilizing Yammer. It's a private network. We're all able to share things with each other that we normally wouldn't share on maybe a form of social media that many people can see. And it's allowed me most recently to find a doctor in Boston that's new to the area that's actually going to be able to help me with some of my hearing loss. Similarly, I've got a friend that was injured as well. That person now has this doctor. So without that being available to us, the chances of my finding that doctor probably would not have happened. So I can't say thank you enough, and thank you to the power of something that's there that has the ability to be implemented on day one after a disaster for people to be able to use. And as a user of it, we still use it today. We actually used it, several folks that were injured last year at or injured in 2013 at the marathon, trained for and actually ran the Boston Marathon this year. There were 28 people that were injured at the marathon in 2013 that trained for and completed the marathon this year. 25 of those people had never run more than 10 miles before. And I say that because we utilized Yammer as a private way to train together. Half those people were not from the Boston area. They were from around the country. And we were able to utilize that virtual private network for some really good reasons. So thank you guys, and thank all of you.
So, again, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Dave. And it's exactly stories like that that we know forms what we can do with technology, sort of the transformation and the power of it. So what we're announcing today is the innovation he started with, we deployed in Boston. We've really created into a proactive solution that we can move quickly on. So we can deploy this within hours, maybe a day, as opposed to months as we saw in the past. We can do this quickly, and we can also do this at national and worldwide scale. And so the focus here is that how you can, if you jump to the next slide, if you want to find out more about this or any of our offerings, you want to know how to deploy it, it's not just something you can kind of go download. We need to work on deploying this and getting it to the right folks. So the best thing is that work with your local contacts for your local community affairs at Microsoft, any account relationship and such, and they will connect you with my team. If you don't know who that is or you don't have that connection, my email address, hopefully you can read it up there, is tony.surma@microsoft.com. Please email me. We'll get you connected to the right folks, and we'll let you know about this offering as well as all the others so you can build a kit of what you want to do with Microsoft technology so we can enable great stories like this. Again, thank you for your time today.
Wow, that was a pretty incredible story about survivors helping survivors, and a great way to kick off this event. And our next speaker is from TaskRabbit, the Vice President of Technology. Kevin, do you mind coming up?
Hi, thanks for having me. A little bit about TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit is really a consumer internet startup in San Francisco. Our primary goal, if I could get the slides. Thanks. So we're a consumer internet startup based in San Francisco. Our primary goal is to create a marketplace that's safe and efficient to connect local service providers with those that are in need of assistance. We're currently in 19 cities in the US and 1 international city, London. We have approximately 2 million customers and 30,000 TaskRabbits known as taskers. Great. So TaskRabbit, the organic platform, is used every day as a medium to help local individuals find the people that they need to get something done in and around their home. What we've seen in the past, especially in Hurricane Sandy, that people essentially use the platform to get really meaningful things done in a very creative way. So what we did, we actually built a system that would enable us to essentially take the task and the payment options out of TaskRabbit, the organic platform. And we're releasing this to first responders coming up. So I'd also like to introduce you to the actual taskers. These are the people that are on the platform every day. They do work every day in and around their communities in a local sense. Their makeup is about 60% female, 50% male. They're highly educated, and they're really motivated. These are exactly the people that you want helping you out in a crisis. They're also the same people that have volunteered to help out in those crises free of charge, and they're just going to use our platform to essentially make that connection. So the problem is how do you find trusted and skilled individuals in the wake of a disaster, and how do you organize them on a single effort? So today I'd like to introduce you to TaskRabbit for first responders. What we've built is a simple, lightweight mobile interface. It works on any web-capable device. It has simple inputs and very smart assumptions. We take advantage of Twilio. We use all mediums available: SMS, push, email, whatever it takes to get the message across. The taskers actually have this device already. So these people are already available. They already know how to use this device. They essentially run their lives from this device, and this is how they source their work on a daily basis. So they're already ready and engaged in the platform. So today, we're going to release a new portal. This isn't vaporware. This is actually available. This is the web interface. It's also mobile responsive and very lightweight, and it's very quick. Essentially, all you have to do is name your need. Inside of, you can put the location. It's all geolocated. All of the taskers are alerted based on their location. You can say how many you need, 1 to 5. We made some smart assumptions: 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and then 20 plus. And the date and time, and it's typically now, right? Like you're in the disaster, and you need help immediately. So all of this stuff is pre-filled now, today, tomorrow, and you can also describe your task. And the cool thing about this is the more information you put into this description box, we can actually source those TaskRabbits based on those skills. We have the technology on the back end to actually match people that say you need shovels. We were just talking about that this morning. We know who the gardeners are. They have the shovels. And we can alert those people in real time. So this is what the alert would look like in their device. This is just a basic push notification. It's also, we do SMS as well as regular email. In the same portal, you can actually get the feedback, which we think is really important. So these are the taskers that have confirmed that they're going to help and rally around your cause. And they can you've already set the date and time, so you know when they'll be there. But this also allows you to end the engagement, so you don't have people showing up after the fact. It also allows you to message any of the committed TaskRabbits, taskers to essentially if you need to change a location or date or time. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. How many of you guys depend on volunteers in the wake of a disaster? That's a lot of you guys. Well, it's great that we can get those resources out to you guys through a platform like TaskRabbit. So our next speaker is going to be addressing the need for transportation. If you're noticing, there's a theme here. This is the sharing economy theme and survivor support theme. So, Pat.
Thank you very much, Brian. So I'll just jump right into it. My name is Patton Murphy, and I head up public policy at GetAround. So as you all know, the kind of immediate hours and days following a disaster, it's really important that folks can get help and supplies to people who are in need, and also so that folks can get out of the disaster if they've perhaps lost a home or lost their vehicle. So this is where GetAround can be helpful. GetAround is a peer-to-peer car sharing platform that allows you to instantly find, rent, and unlock vehicles in your neighborhood, all from your mobile device. So if you own a car, you can share your car when you're not using it to make additional income. And if you want to live car-free, you can walk outside and find a car on your street and find it, rent it, and unlock it from your phone. So it's safe, secure, and insured. So here's a quick slide just showing how simple it is. But I'm happy to announce today that we are following up on our commitment that we've made to Brian and to the community, that in the event of a disaster, we'll basically follow a three-point policy. So we have made a web portal that will be customized for the disaster and the location of the community, specifically where something has occurred. And that basically will do a number of things. It will educate the community about how they can find a car or a truck if they need it. And it will also, importantly, educate folks how to share their vehicle if they have one available very quickly. And then it integrates directly into the GetAround platform. The second thing that we've committed to doing, similar to what TaskRabbit has said, is that we will notify our entire community via SMS, push notifications, and email of owners to, if they can, make their cars and trucks available, and if possible, at a much lower price, if not free. And the final thing that we're committing to is that GetAround will waive its commission during the disaster. And we're doing this because, one, it's our civic responsibility, but also GetAround doesn't own any cars. All the car owners and all of the renters are of the communities. They're within the cities where we operate. So it's definitely part of our culture and part of our commitment. So here's the web portal. It's very basic. This just does three things. It integrates directly into the GetAround platform. But importantly, it educates folks who might not already be a renter. So it walks them through exactly how they can get a car, and if someone does own the car, it pushes them to the product. But importantly, it also allows us to get their information so that we can waive the commission on the back end. And so here's what it looks like from the renter's perspective. And I actually am a GetAround owner, so you're looking at my real profile here in car. It's a little smart car in San Francisco. But the app is free to download. There's no registration fee or anything like that. All you need is a Facebook account, a valid driver's license, and a credit card. You download it, you find a car nearby you, you look at the profile, and you rent it. And then you can unlock, get in the car, and get supplies or folks to where they need to be. From the owner perspective, the web portal will just push you right into the sharing your car page. And it's really easy, again, free to sign up. All you need is a Facebook login to get in, and then you just create a car profile, a few photos, a description of your car, the location, and the price. And this is exactly what the owners will see. So currently today we are ready to follow up on this commitment in San Francisco, Portland, Chicago, San Diego, and Austin. But throughout 2015, we'll be launching major markets, so we'll be coming to you. But I also want to make myself available. Please reach out to me. My email is Padden, P-A-D-D-E-N, @getaround.com. Or you can learn more at getaround.com or just download the app. It's free. But we're excited to be helping as we move forward. And working together with you in advance is important because there are folks who will have trucks and cars who it might not make sense to share normally on the platform. But if you own a nursery or a construction company and you have a whole fleet of vehicles and your employees do, you're probably not going to share them on GetAround, normal 9 to 5. But in the event, you're going to want to help. And that's where we can do a lot of educating in communities on the front end with you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was fantastic. Our next speaker is Molly Turner, who's the Director of Public Policy and Civic Partnerships at Airbnb, here to make a great announcement about how how they can help address housing in the wake of a disaster.
I'm also joined on the stage by two wonderful partners. If you just introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Johnson. I'm the Resilience and Recovery Manager for the City of San Francisco.
And I'm Carmen Merlo. I'm the Director of the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Molly Turner, Director of Civic Partnerships at Airbnb. Let's see, we got our fancy new slides here. As you all know, after a disaster, it is really critical to provide housing to displaced survivors. Several of them are able to stay with friends or family. However, that might be far away from home or from their work. Most others are left with few options but emergency shelters. Additionally, relief workers also have difficulty finding housing when they arrive in the affected area ready to help. Well, many members of Airbnb's global community are both willing and able to open their homes to their displaced neighbors. And that's why I'm here on stage today to talk about Airbnb's new disaster relief initiative. The idea came from our community in New York. When Superstorm Sandy hit the East Coast in 2012, we wanted to help. So we quickly hacked our website to allow 1,400 Airbnb hosts to open their homes and cook meals for their displaced neighbors. We were inspired by their stories and challenged to build an initiative that would make it easier for anybody to open their homes to those in need for free anywhere in the world. So how does it work? Let's say an earthquake were to hit Washington, D.C. today, a rare occurrence, but we know it can happen, and thousands of homes sustain damage. If you happen to live in a home in the region that is doing okay and you have extra space, you can go to our website and click, "I'd like to offer my space." If you're an existing Airbnb host, it will copy all of the information from your existing listing. Your pictures, your profile information, all of your contact information, your previous reviews, your address, et cetera, et cetera. If you've never hosted before, it will direct you to our Make Your Listing page, which very easily creates a new profile for you. You can take pictures with your iPhone, et cetera. Let's say you're displaced and you need a place to stay. You go to the same landing page and click, "I need a place to stay." If you're an existing Airbnb user, you can use your existing profile. This is my profile. Again, all of your information, photos about you, all of the reviews from previous hosts that you've stayed with. If you've never used Airbnb before, it will take you to a page where you create a new profile and you upload as much information as you're able to upload. You can search for a place to stay with all of the same criteria with which you would search on Airbnb for a vacation spot. Neighborhood, proximity to transit, walking distance to your work, number of bedrooms. However, unlike on this page, it would all be free of cost. Additionally, we would provide Airbnb's 24/7 customer support, trust and safety tools, $1 million host guarantee, and all other services that are regularly available to Airbnb hosts and guests. And Airbnb is in over 35,190 countries worldwide. So this initiative has incredible reach and potential. In fact, since 2012, we've activated the initiative in San Diego in response to major fires, Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia in response to the Balkan floods, London, Sardinia, and Colorado after serious flooding there, Kefalonia in response to a major earthquake, Toronto and Atlanta in response to severe ice storms, and the Philippines in response to Typhoon Haiyan. But we've learned through all of this that there's a lot more that we can do if we proactively build relationships with cities and first responders and emergency managers in these regions before a disaster occurs. So today, I'm very excited to announce new partnerships that will help Airbnb work collaboratively with cities on this community-based model of disaster preparedness and response. We've signed 2 memorandums of understanding, one with the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management and another with San Francisco Department of Emergency Management. And I'm excited to be joined by our partners from these 2 cities up here today. As part of the agreement, we will work with the 2 cities, before, during, and after disasters to do 4 things. The first is to identify Airbnb hosts in the city who will commit to opening their homes in the event of a disaster to their displaced neighbors if they're able. The second is to provide emergency preparedness materials to hosts to help them be the most prepared folks on the block. The third, we'll use our mobile technology to notify hosts and guests of any significant hazardous incidents. And lastly, we'll help bring our community together for emergency response trainings. We're excited to work together with these cities to help more residents during an emergency. But our work in San Francisco and Portland is just the start. This kind of community-based disaster preparedness is effective, and we look forward to working with many more cities as we move forward. If you'd like more information, I happen to have some brochures with me after the event. You can find out more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Molly and team. What a fantastic announcement. And that concludes the sharing economy and survivor support section of the day, or the first quarter of the day. Really amazing to see how impactful sharing economy companies can be in the wake of a disaster, and excited to see more continue with their commitments to their local communities. And the next section that we're going to start on is crowdsourcing. And so, as many of you saw in the wake of Hurricane Sandy and subsequent disasters, there was a really big challenge for improving situational awareness. In Hurricane Sandy, for example, it was with gas stations. And so what we found is crowdsourcing can be an incredibly powerful tool. And so these next speakers that will be up here talking about the tools that they've built out will talk about how they're employing crowdsourcing. And the first speaker is Ray Bauer from NGA. He's the technology lead for Readiness, Response, and Recovery Group. And he's here to talk about GeoQ. Right?
Very much like Brian, right after Hurricane Sandy, I received a new job, and I haven't been back since. And that was to go off and fix things. And we're still in the process of trying to make things better. Disasters are a very interesting process to work because they're forever changing, but there are some common workflow and some common thread that flows throughout. And that's what we were trying to solve when we started to work on GeoQ. I'm going to talk about a lot of things, but the common theme I want you to think about when you are looking at this is everything we're doing is open source. Everything we're doing can be used on any HTML5 viewer. We believe very much in crowdsourcing. Everything is OGC compliant, so we also use open standards and open APIs. We're working in some new ideas I'll show you, like gamification. If it works for my kids and they can get money in my pocket doing that, I figure it can be also a good way to try and get folks to work harder. We're going to show a little bit about business metrics and workflow. Next slide, please. Oh, here it is. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank the director of NGA. She has allowed NGA to be the first intelligence agency to have a GitHub site for the agency. And we've had that open for about 4 months now. We have about 9 projects out there and available. You can see one is GeoQ. So this is a whole new idea of trying to do business and putting our code out there and try to work this as a community. As you can see, we've been building this with FEMA, the White House Innovation Fellow Program. And we're also working with Geo Huntsville and some others to develop this code on a weekly basis. This is hostable by any organization. You can go out to GitHub and you can pull this code down and you can host it yourself. We're not going to be hosting a server for everyone to hit. We are going to give out the code so that we can have a common tool so that everyone can use. Again, it's open and available, free, and as you can see, it's growing. The number of people that go out and are working with us are growing every day. There's a few other tools. Also, there's an RFI tool available and event page tool. Again, we have 111 folks who are watching us. We've had over 24 people who have taken a copy of this code and moving forward with it. So here you have the very beginning of that workflow I was talking about. During any emergency, we try to divide up the disaster into projects, jobs, and then work cells. And then this way we can crowdsource it out. Here you can see the Huntsville has their page that they stood up, and this is their blueprint for safety. And those red boxes are the work areas that they have. Next, those red areas we just saw, we give you many different ways to divide those up into work cells. You can use U.S. National Grid or Military Grid Reference System. If you have a certain number of people or you know how big you want the cells to be, we also allow you to divide it up that. Or if you have a shapefile or you have some other way to annotate what the disaster area is, you can drag it in and it'll automatically divide it up into these cells. These cells then can automatically be assigned and sent out to individuals who are in your work group. So they get an email. Email can say, you have work. And they click on a link and they can go in and start working on one of these cells. We even have it down to the point where it's green cells are completed, yellow cells are in work. So at any time we can take a look and see where we are in the disaster assessment process. We monitor this work also in real time. All data that is brought back into this tool is then republished out as an open API. This open API is available to anyone who wants to come in, grab it, and display it in any viewer that they have. Here we have a picture of, this is the GeoQ tool itself. This is what an analyst would see using any browser who is connected to the web. We have several different layers that are available. Whoever sets up the event can bring in whatever layers are open and available for that event. It can be changed very quickly with the OGC standards. We also have built-in social media feeds. Whoever takes this tool and then sets it up, they can bring in whatever feeds they want. And during a disaster, we found that there's a lot of this information that's very relevant and very helpful for disaster response. Talk to you a little bit about gamification, trying to get our analysts to engage, to try and do more, and look at tradecraft to find out who needs a little more training in this area and other areas. Who are the more reliable, who are the analysts that we need to assign to certain tasks. These badges and icons that you see at the top are trying to look at how we can work gamification into this tool itself. Customized features. You can bring in any structured observation database that you want, again, as long as it's using an open API, and then we can display and use that to do our data collection. So we can bring in commercial satellite imagery. In the case of in Oklahoma, a year ago, we actually used some helicopter footage from news helicopters to bring that in to do a terrain assessment and actually use those customized features to do our damage assessment. Impact, here's one of the products that we actually used during the Colorado floods. It was very quick, it was very easy. We had a small group at that time. We are looking to build the community. We're inviting anyone who would like to join us on our GitHub page to come visit, come take a look at the code, come participate in programming, come participate in testing, or come take a copy of the code and maybe you can use it in your products or what you're going to provide back to the government and make them an even better tool for all of us. Thank you very much.
I also want to recognize Jackie Kazil, who is a former Presidential Innovation Fellow and was one of the great minds behind building out GeoQ with FEMA and NGA. So just a round of applause for Jackie as well. And so our next speaker is representing a Presidential Innovation Fellow as well and had the foresight to bring one on board to the United States Department of Energy. And here he is to talk about the tool that they built out, Lantern Live, which was in response to the issues that we saw in Hurricane Sandy with identifying which gas stations had fuel or not. Deputy Assistant Secretary Bill Bryan.
Thanks, Brian, and good afternoon. As Todd Parks mentioned, Derek Frempong is actually the brains behind developing this app. He had a family emergency and could not be here today. I was the inspiration, but he was the developer. He actually made it happen. And you were going to see today the slides that he actually used to brief the President of the United States on the app. You're getting it firsthand what he prepared for the President. I have to start off by saying that I had the privilege of being on the ground during Sandy with Rick Serino, first 10 days after landfall, seeing firsthand what the needs were out there. So Lantern Live was actually inspired by some of the lessons learned during that time of being on the ground. One thing certain was we lacked situational awareness, a lot of situational awareness, particularly in the area of fuels. So that was something we clearly needed to try to make adjustments to and fix. But I will tell you that social media was alive and well. There were a lot of people out there talking about gas stations, who had gas, who didn't have gas, where there were power lines down, where there were no utility trucks. And we knew we needed to capture that. In some way, shape, or form, it was very clear that the citizens, the people, wanted to help. And we felt we needed to empower them to help them help us in going forward in this. So we see it as a great effort. And if you go to the next slide. Do I have the next slide? Oh, you got it. Okay, good. Thank you. Lantern Live, it's relatively simple, but here are some of the big lessons learned that we had to capture. First, status of fuel stations. As I mentioned before, people were out there chasing around fuel trucks, not knowing where there was gasoline and where there was not gasoline, where some gasoline was being given out free, other gas they had to pay for. The bottom line is people were kind of just wandering in the wind and wondering where there was gasoline available. Power outages was another one. There wasn't a clear indication of how widespread the power outages were in the area that was impacted, and people wanted to know that. That's a good indicator. Do I stick around a little while? Do I pack up and move on? They wanted a little more insight into the power outages. And just so you know, a lot of utility companies have very elaborate websites that a lot of the citizens don't even know to access or how to access. So this app will help them do that. There's also the ability to report outages. One thing that would really streamline restoration is getting assessments done immediately after landfall occurs. And that is a process that the utility companies have to go through, and sometimes can take 2, depending on the disaster, up to 3 days to really do a good assessment of the damage to the grid. So by putting power into the hands of the citizens to be able to take pictures and geolocate where there's damaged infrastructure, and our ability to get that to the utility, it could potentially speed up the restoration process. So that was incorporated. And also preparedness. And talking to community leaders, a lot of these community leaders, a lot of these mayors are only in these positions for just a couple years. They may never ever see a disaster, but the ones that did made the comment that if we only knew how to prepare for a long-term energy outage, that would have made a big impact of how they would have prepared their community going into these events. So we developed guidelines for handling energy outages for community leaders, for business owners, and for homeowners, again, all available on the app. Next slide. If you look at the gas pump situation, as far as gas stations, what the app does is from where you're located, it's going to tell you within a 2.5-mile radius what gas stations are around you. It's going to be color-coded, red, green, or yellow, based on if they have fuel or not, or if they're actually moving product out of that gas station. If it's green, they have gas. If it's red, they don't. If it's yellow, we don't quite have enough data yet to determine. It's kind of like in a transition mode. All right, the algorithm is built in there, so someone can't sit there and take their competitor and keep shutting the competitor down. That's not going to be allowed to happen. So Derek factors some of that in there. But it's good to have. And so right now it's in a big beta test that we have going on right now, and it seems to be working very well. Then there's a power outage map. If you go wherever you are, it knows who your utility provider is based on your location, and it'll take you directly to that energy outage map for that utility. And you're going to be able to see firsthand and have access to that website, and also be able to interact with that utility company, either through phone calls or reporting outages, reporting your own personal outage. It works right now in my neighborhood. I can actually work and deal with my utility through the app currently. while we're in beta testing. So it's a good app to have, a good piece of the app. The next one is reporting power lines or down power lines. Getting back to my earlier point, the sooner we get information to a utility and they know what the damage or the extent of the damage, they know how to better prepare to go out and restore and respond to that event. So after reading a disclaimer and agreeing to this disclaimer, you're going to be able to take a photograph of the down power line or other damaged energy infrastructure. It'll go to a private Twitter account. It'll just have the geolocation. It'll be anonymous. We will not know who sent it to us, but we're going to receive that information. It's geolocated. We're going to be able to get that, package that, get it to the utility so they could respond to it. And then finally, the tips and the guides, and of course, tweeting with the Department of Energy one-on-one is also part of that app. But those the guidelines that I mentioned are already captured in this app as well. So I mentioned that it's in beta test, and it is, and it has been. We are now about ready within the next very, very near future, probably the next couple of days, going to an expanded beta test. We plan to do that for about 30 days and then open it up to the general public. So if you are a .gov, if you have a .gov email address, some out here do, you can actually subscribe to be part of the expanded beta test. And you can make that request by going to Lantern Live Beta at hq.doe.gov. That's Lantern Live Beta, all one word, at hq.doe.gov. And we will sign you up as soon as we go to the expanded beta test. You will be part of that. Again, for about 30 days and shortly thereafter, we hope to make the app available at both the App Store for iProducts and, of course, the Google Store for Android. So that's all we have. Thank you very much.
You know, as Bill mentioned, it's really amazing when we get to see some of these tools, and it's even more amazing, as Bill mentioned, that when the president gets to see some of these innovative tools as well at his most recent hurricane brief that was publicly stated. The other thing that we didn't mention is Bill is also retiring soon, and so I think that's my new sales pitch to bring folks on to Innovation for Disaster. Join Innovation for Disaster, retire within 2 years. Our next speaker is Ryan Mannion, who's head of government partnerships for SeeClickFix, and has a very exciting announcement to make.
So hopefully I won't be retiring in 2 years, but first I want to say thank you to Brian and the entire team for putting this together. SeeClickFix is very honored to even be part of this conversation, so hopefully this presentation gives you a little bit of insight in what we do and how we can help in a disaster situation. So as SeeClickFix, as a company, we work with cities, municipalities across the country to actually help citizens report non-emergency service requests, potholes, graffiti, things of that nature. And we're currently working with 191 cities across the country, including right here in Washington, D.C. We, in collaboration with the 301 department, built and launched the DC 301 app 2 years ago now. Collaboratively, all of these cities have reported 1.2 million service requests on our platform. And we have an active user base of 350,000 citizens. So the question is, how does this help first responders? And it's pretty simple. It is a day one active user base for you to tap into in the event of an emergency. So the platform that we built is completely dynamic. And what you see here is an interactive geography that covers a vast portion of the Northeast. In this case, that was hit by Hurricane Sandy. What we can do is actually overlay the service requests that are common with the municipal partners that we have in this region with the service requests that you as first responders and emergency management individuals have targeted as the information that you need. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see power outage, damaged tree, and flooding. Now these are just examples, but we were able to run a proof of concept with this with the data that we collected immediately after Sandy. One of our developers retroactively went into our software and pulled out the image that you see here. And although you can't see the colors, there's 3 different ones, and they represent those service requests that I mentioned earlier. So this is actionable and clear data that right now is residing on our servers. And so this goes into part of what we're pledging today and what we're announcing today, is that any emergency management entity that wants to have access to, first and foremost, control the entire zone or an entire region on our mobile app, they can do that. And we give free and open access to our API for cities to actually, or for emergency management to actually activate and look into our data. So that was a proof of concept, what I just showed you. A remarkable event happened in Boston when the marathon was bombed last year. We put this idea into action. And so, similar to what Airbnb was talking about earlier, we put a plea out in this entire region for citizens to offer up their houses to any relatives that were impacted by the event. And what you see here are normal service requests the day before, the week building up before the marathon. Again, graffiti, potholes, things of that nature. The day after, within 24 hours, 750 people posted their homes on SeeClickFix. Now, this is not what our platform is built for. This is information that we're just collecting. What we want to do is figure out ways on how we can work with the Airbnbs of the world to actually make this proactive and actionable information. So again, this all leads back around to the concept of API integrations and access to open data. In addition to Hurricane Sandy and the Boston Marathon, SeeClickFix played a unique and significant role in Moore when the tornado hit, as well as the winter storm Nemo that hit the Northeast. And all 4 of these occasions, we collected different types of data. What we want to do, again, is make this available for you all to work with and control what types of information are being collected through our built-in user base and our app that's already active in so many cities across the country. So that's it. It's a pretty quick presentation, but I want to thank you again for your time. And if anybody has any questions about anything that I covered, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it in the breakout session. I would also encourage you to download DC 311 and report a pothole when you leave so that you can see how our system actually works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So I'm going to call a bit of an audible because we are running a few minutes late, so we're just going to switch one speaker in. So the next speaker is not David Appleby. It's actually Dr. Karen DeSalvo, who's the National Coordinator for Health and Information Technology at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who has a fantastic story to tell and an announcement to make. So thank you so much, Karen.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here on behalf of HHS and on behalf of ASPR for Dr. Nikki Lurie, who's somewhere enjoying the world on something that they call a vacation, which I know y'all know nothing about. This is really an opportunity for me to share with you a story about a successful collaboration between HHS and local officials and the local community, and tell you some announcements about how we're working to bring that to scale and bring that information back home to those who need it most. Before I joined ONC and HHS about 7 months ago, I was actually the health commissioner in the city of New Orleans. I was not health commissioner at the time that Katrina happened, but was health commissioner when we were visited by a couple of other storms, one of which was Isaac. And while in that role, and when Isaac brought down our power in our city for 5 days, was under the enormous stress of having to find a way to find those most in need in our community. And like most health commissioners, relied upon our medical special needs registry to identify those in my community who would need help evacuating, help because there was a power outage, help because there was water. We had a good registry, and we started working the phones early, but most people wanted to evacuate in place, even if they were power dependent. And it was quite a challenge to get them to let us come get them and put them to a medical special needs shelter. Much less the fact that when we started going door to door, as many folks did in Sandy and other power outages, we realized that there were people who were not registered who frankly didn't even know that we existed. The fact that we had been standing up on podiums and telling people to call 311 and get registered so they could get help in a time of need was really missing them and missing the mark. So in partnership with HHS, as part of the Strong Cities, Strong Communities effort, we developed a protocol and a plan that would allow, in the event of a disaster, durable medical equipment needing patients, in our community to be identifiable. This was a way that through a request to HHS, we could have data pushed to us in the local health department that we could map and see where those most in need, in this case, those who are oxygen dependent, would be, and we would have to focus our resources, not just for research and rescue, but also for prioritizing power restoration. Let me be concrete. One of the questions health commissioners get asked in the event of a power outage is, which of these neighborhood blocks do you want to turn back on now that we're moving down the priority list? And in the absence of knowing where the concentration of folks who had durable medical equipment lived, it was a little bit of a guess. A little informed by our scout work, but after having the data for who is oxygen dependent, it helps us prioritize in a population level who needs to get the power restored. The exercise was a wild success, if I do say so myself. We had a terrific experience of the data working, of the data 93% of the time actually really identifying somebody who was oxygen dependent in our community, and we validated it by sending teams out to go door to door for a subset of the 617 folks who we had identified in the database. 200 doors we visited, and we found it was real people, really on oxygen, who, when we said we're from the government and we're here to help, didn't slam the door in our face, and actually were then willing to get registered with us. Of those 617 folks, we only knew of 15 of them in our medical special needs registry. So there were more than 600 people just from that list in our community in New Orleans we would have missed if we had not had the opportunity to use this data from Medicare to begin to map and find those most in need. This effort in New Orleans was the beginning of a broader set of initiatives that HHS is engaged in. And today I want to tell you about 4 things that we are doing at HHS that are available for you to use today and into the future to help communities in need on the ground. The first is that we are launching an open data interactive map. Kristen Finney over there, raise your hand. Y'all can go see her later today at our table to learn more about how you can see the number of durable medical equipment using Medicare beneficiaries in your community so that you can reach them in their time of most need, when not just in disaster, well, right now in disaster, but hopefully over time help them prepare for disaster. Secondly, we're starting to roll out nationally something called Now Trending, which is an application that scours social media to find out what's trending on social media and identify what are the hot topic issues that could turn into public health emergencies, and allow you to do a set of analytics that can be very tailored to state and local health department emergency preparedness needs. Where's Stacy? Raise your hand. I remember working on you with that when I was in New Orleans. Third, the back to my city of New Orleans, which is one of Rockefeller Foundation's 100 Resilient Cities. This is a project to place in cities resiliency officers to focus on not just response and recovery, but really building up resilience of communities. And we're going to be working with a partnership to help train those resiliency officers to know what tools are available for them in times of emergency to use the HHS resources that we have. And finally, ONC has made available on its website the results of something called the Search Project, which was something started in 2010, where we can convene folks from the Gulf states, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Georgia, to come together and see what they would be able to leverage from their health information exchanges, from the electronic health record and clinical data that was being collected about patients with their consent, and then be useful in the event, for example, of evacuation during disaster or in times of need if they had to go to other health sites. So we are delighted to share our story of success about what we did in New Orleans with Medicare data to help find those most in need on durable medical equipment, and share with you how we are bringing that information to scale to help you on the front lines every day. I encourage you to visit our table after the event so you can learn more about where to get the specifics on the resources. Thank you all very much.
Well, that was just fantastic. Truly amazing and fantastic commitment. And it's great to hear from a local health commissioner as well, who's now come over to the federal government, about the impact that we can have when we work together. Our next speaker is now Dr. David Applegate from the Associate Director for Natural Hazards, the U.S. Geological Survey.
Well, thanks, Brian, and I'm thrilled to be here. It's great to hear about some of these exciting tools that are being developed and used in this arena. For the U.S. Geological Survey, we're a science agency, and one of our key jobs is to provide situational awareness across a whole range of different hazards. When it comes to earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, we're the direct source for that. And for a lot of other hazards, we support our good friends at NOAA. We provide the eyes and ears, the stream gauges, storm surge monitors for floods, other severe weather. And of course, we're a mapping agency, so we provide geospatial data layers. And across all of these hazards, we welcome the help and the input from the tech community to find new and innovative ways that we can get that authoritative information out and get it used by the emergency management community. I'm going to be speaking specifically about earthquakes, and there was a time when the situational awareness we provided for earthquakes was we could tell you that it happened, where it happened, and how big it was, and that's all good information. But to make it actionable, you need to know where's the shaking most intense, where do we need to prioritize our efforts, where do we need to focus. And so that's what ShakeMap is all about. This is showing a version of it. It's basically taking the information from our seismic networks, translating that into intensity. This is the Los Angeles area showing what the shake map would have been for the Northridge earthquake, which is celebrating the 25th anniversary of that major disaster. This particular version is draped over Google Earth. It's available, shake maps can be available in a whole range of different formats, and that's something that can be then pulled down and ingested into different systems, for example, feeding into FEMA's HAZUS loss estimation. Part of ShakeMap is about making use of our seismic networks, but it's also about making use of human seismometers. So we've had over 3 million felt reports through our Did You Feel It site, where people come in, tell us, describe what they've experienced. And we can, of course, compare this to where we do have instrumental records, and we can see that actually human seismometers are pretty good. They're pretty accurate. And moreover, they can provide a lot of additional grain that we then feed back into the shake map for these events. This is showing the 140,000 Did You Feel It reports that we got for the Virginia earthquake that struck here, that was felt right here just a couple of years ago. It was felt from Maine to Georgia all the way out to Wisconsin. And now we're trying to find ways to get that information even faster, actually tapping into Twitter feeds. Although we would like everybody, when they feel an earthquake, to drop cover and hold on. People, well, they may do that, but they also tweet OMG earthquake while they're somehow managing to do that. I'm not quite sure how. And so we can use the geolocated tweets to actually get a sort of almost an early detection on those events. It also, what we call our TED, or our Tweet Earthquake Dispatch, also enables us to then feed the authoritative information back into the different social media streams. People want to know what happened, what's going on. So we need to be there in the streams where they're operating. With ShakeMap, it really forms the basis for a whole suite of different information tools that we can provide. And of course, the reason people want to know about where a hazard is because of what it is that's at stake there, whether it's facilities, people, whatnot. So we developed the ShakeCast system, and this is a way for folks to pull in the shake map, overlay it against their lists of facilities, and get a very rapid estimation of what's the intensity for what it is that they care about. And this is, it's being used by a whole range of emergency managers at different entities. For example, LA Unified School District, to the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, to the California Department of Transportation. And more, this is one of the tools we very much want to get out there and get broadly used, again, to be able to provide the information in as actionable way as we can. We've recently updated the user interface to be very mobile friendly, with now an increasing number of the hits that we're getting coming through the mobile platforms. And we've also moved the back end to the cloud to be more nimble and to be able to better support users for that. Then the final ShakeMap-based tool that I want to mention here is Pager. That's called Prompt Assessment of Global Earthquakes for Response. And just like ShakeCast, it's moving from just talking about the hazard to talking about risk, talking about what is vulnerable, what's at stake here. And in this case, it's providing a very fast order of magnitude estimate of likely fatalities and economic losses from an event. And this is sent out, this is available within minutes of the event. It's useful for not just governments, but also relief organizations to know both when they need to deploy, when they don't need to deploy. Of course, after a disaster, a lot of times communications are out. The actual fatality counts are going to rise, you know, a few a day, then it turns into tens, hundreds over days as more and more is learned. This is a way to try to get a quick snapshot of what the likely outcomes are going to be. In the case of the Wenchuan earthquake that struck in China, we had Save the Children telling us that this sped up their response efforts in country by several days, and that's the whole purpose of having these kinds of tools. So these are just a few of the tools that we have out there in the earthquake arena. They're ones that you know, we're always looking to innovate, to find new ways to deliver them, work with the tech community again, get our information put to work. And of course, for the emergency management community, if you're not using it already, we very much want to work with you to make that happen. There's information about all of these at earthquake.usgs.gov, as well as all of these are applications that are, can be found on data.gov and safety.data.gov. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it. Oh, and the clicker.
And I will give you your clicker.
Thank you, which I'm sure the next presenter will appreciate. So Paul Lemieux is from the Office of Research and Development at the Environmental Protection Agency and is here to talk about I-waste.
Thanks, Brian. One of the things that we as a country have to deal with are disasters of many kinds, some of which haven't actually happened yet, thankfully, but we may have to face them. You have natural disasters like earthquakes, Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy. You might have industrial accidents like the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, or foreign animal diseases incidents where you might have a bird flu outbreak. Or you might have terrorist attacks where they might spread anthrax in a city. And all of these disasters have one thing in common, is that they all generate waste. And we really don't want to have to hassle with the waste and have it interfere with our ability to do our recovery operations. The problem we have with the waste when you're dealing with a disaster is that we have a set of environmental laws that we're all working with that all have authority at the local, state, and federal level. And they're used for routine management of waste that we have, like our garbage, or if you have to tear down a building that has asbestos in it and you have to send it off to a special kind of landfill. Those are the same environmental laws that we have to use during a disaster, and they're not really set up for that. So you have to work with all of the people across all the aspects of the regulatory authorities in order to make this happen in such a way that it protects the people, protects the environment, and still complies with the relevant regulations. So we designed the I-waste tool in order to try to gather together the information needed for the decision makers to make the appropriate decisions. And one of the things I'd like to do is give a shout out to all of the people who have supported us in developing this tool over the years. This was made by people across the EPA, across the federal government like FEMA, Department of Energy. We've brought in some of the state regulators, in particular New York State DEC was extremely helpful. We had the private sector, the people who operate the landfills, the people who operate the incinerators. Because when you're dealing with a disaster, it's not a routine situation where you're just paying the landfill to take the stuff. They have to be willing to accept these materials. And they found during the Deepwater Horizon incident that the routine waste that went to the landfills one day no longer could go there the next day because they weren't ready for handling that quantity, or there were potentially environmental justice issues related to having a huge amount of oily waste being brought into a potentially impacted area that might not have, that might be disadvantaged. This tool is out online right now. It's directed mainly as users for the EPA response community, the state and local agencies, and waste management facility operators. The idea is we can use this for training, for planning, for exercises, but if there is an actual incident, we can then use this as a starting point to support the decision-making process for doing the cleanup. If you log on, there's 4 main parts. One of them lets you develop an inventory of the waste and identify where you might send it. I'm not going to go into that for this because it's a little bit more elaborate of a demo. The other part is databases of treatment and disposal facilities, an estimator to allow you to estimate the quantity of waste that you might generate from different types of buildings. Then you can look and see, based on the incident, well, maybe the drywall is not going to be going into the waste stream, so you can eliminate that from your calculations. Finally, we've tried to gather together relevant guidance that is out there for people to use. So if states have developed emergency response plans that has incorporated waste management, we try to put a link in there so they don't have to go hunting through 10 pages of Google hits in order to get the information. Here's an example of the waste quantity estimator. In general, there's different types of buildings. You can plug in how many square feet or how many office occupants there'd be for offices, how many students there would be for schools, how many rooms there would be in different sizes of hotels, and it will give you a rough estimate of how much waste of different types would be involved in if you had to dispose of the contents of those buildings or to dispose of the buildings themselves, the structural materials. There's databases of facilities. So if, for example, you generate a lot of wood waste, you can look up and find out where you might be able to send this material to a pulp and paper mill boiler who they could then use it for energy purposes. Or if you've generated a bunch of scrap iron, where might you send it off to recycle it? And it also lets you filter it based on the state or the EPA region. And the EPA regions and the FEMA regions are contiguous with each other, so that kind of simplifies things. We also just recently took these facility databases and prepared them in a geocoded format, so this is downloadable, and we're working with the EPA's GeoPlatform people and the DHS GeoConops folks to try to make it so this would be available in the appropriate formats to any of the users of those platforms. Finally, there's a library of relevant guidance, and you can search it out based on keywords, and it will return either a link to the article or the original article. We tried to gather together as many of the original sources as possible. It's online right now. There's the URL. You should be able to get on and get an account, and I'd be happy to answer any questions in the post room, or whatever we call it. Finally, I'd like to put a plug in. This is not the only tool that EPA has been developing for these types of purposes, and there's additional things out on the www.epa.gov/research website that are publicly available, and I'd encourage you to search it out. It's got some pretty good search capability, so it's not as hard to find as some of the other things within other parts of the government. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. And I think what's fantastic is if you looked at that whole group talking about crowdsourcing, 4 out of the 5 presentations are actually from the government, which is interesting because most people don't think about the government as a great platform for crowdsourcing, but actually they're one of the original crowdsourcers back in, I believe, the late 1800s, and the head of the Smithsonian started crowdsourcing weather data across America and then later across the Caribbean and Latin America, which became the foundation for the National Weather Service. So we've been crowdsourcing for a few years, and it's great to see new tools continue to build to leverage the knowledge of the crowds. So we're about to transition to open data. So a couple quick things. One, if there's a seat next to you that's empty, if you can't see from the live stream, it's actually really packed in here. And so there are, looks like there's a couple of empty seats. If there's a seat next to you that's empty, just raise your hand so that someone can come in and grab a comfy seat. Look, we have a few hands here, so just come on in and grab a seat. We're open sourcing, crowdsourcing seat locations here. Fantastic. And also just take a second to kind of stretch out a bit as we head into the second part of the day, which is open data. So our next speaker is Dr. Meredith Lee, who is also one of the co-leaders of the White House Innovation for Disaster Response and Recovery Initiative, and has been an incredible partner to the White House in all of her work, and represented the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Tech incredibly well. And this event would not have happened without her support. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank Meredith for all of her work. And she'll be presenting the future site of disasters.data.gov, which will be a new data initiative that we'll be working on to highlight a lot of these tools and a lot of the data that's here. And so we're excited to give you a preview, but we wanted to give you a preview to actually incorporate and start to crowdsource some of the ideas. So to present all of these, the preview is Meredith Lee.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. So today, the Innovation for Disaster Response and Recovery Initiative, in collaboration with the team at data.gov, is very excited to share a preview of disasters.data.gov, a new portal. Ava, if you could load the preview. Excellent, thank you. This site will feature disaster-related data sets, as well as tools built by innovators in the private as well as public sector to improve disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. We're currently building out a Get Involved section for developers, tech entrepreneurs, first responders, survivors, and volunteers. This section will feature challenge statements and can highlight how those who want to get involved can shape and actually tap into technology innovation in new ways. We would love, as Brian said, to have your feedback to make sure that this site is helpful to you and to ensure that it highlights tools that you can leverage now, before, during, and after disasters. We've started creating content and are thrilled by the magnitude and the frequency of the support, with over 100 different tools coming in, countless emails just in the last few weeks. So on behalf of the open data enthusiasts and civil servants behind this growing initiative, thank you so much for your contributions thus far, and please keep sending your thoughts, data, and ideas. We look forward to continued collaboration in the following weeks, months, years, and for those of us who are new to government, possibly decades. And we are grateful that you are here in person as well as virtually. Today is just the beginning of what's to come. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meredith. Because of the timing, we're actually going to call another audible. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Reginald Brothers, the Undersecretary for Science and Technology, which I guess makes him Meredith's boss, for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Nice job, Meredith. So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thank you. So I want to thank you all for inviting me to be here. It's a real good opportunity. Let me introduce the organization in case you are unfamiliar. Department of Homeland Security Science Technology Directorate is essentially the corporate research component of Department of Homeland Security. So that's who we are. What I'd like to do is give you some sense of some of the kind of projects we're working on for the first responder community, all right? This is an important day. we're bringing together technologists, entrepreneurs, and members of the response community to learn about data sharing tools that will truly, really do mean truly make a difference for our first responders at all levels. I've been here for about 3 of the talks and can already see the kinds of important tools that you're learning about. At our directorate, we work to provide the first response community at the tribal, local, state, and federal levels with the technology that they need to best do their jobs, more safely, more efficiently, and more affordably. We recognize the importance of operationalizing data, taking from big data and making it into little data. That is information that's both relevant and useful. And here are some of the ways that we're trying to do that. Our focus is first on gathering requirements. And why is that? Because we have to understand really what types of projects we have to undertake, right? We're mostly scientists and technologists. We're not walking the beat with you every day. We're not putting out fires. We're not responding to calls. We don't pretend to know what you need. So in determining how we can help, we go straight to first responders, like some of you here. We crafted something called Project First Responder. It's a broad research initiative that was really meant to determine what kind of gaps that the first responder community might have in terms of sharing of data, interoperable communications, and personal protective equipment. From that, we work with more than 130 first responders from various disciplines in our first responder resource groups. That's one of the groups that we have under our directorate. And from this group, we create detailed requirements. We create documents that industry can use to develop solutions and tools that can meet and hopefully really help the first responders. So here's an example. The first responder community said it needed a way to safely access and share critical incident information, such as road closures, evacuation routes, and shelters during emergencies. We responded with something we call Virtual USA. It's a web-based information sharing platform and now an app that's being used by nearly 800 members of the emergency management community across 30 states. The app allows responders to seamlessly search and share critical information across portals from DHS, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, the Department of the Interior, the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Geological Survey, the Department of Energy, the American Red Cross, and dozens of others. Virtual USA has proven its value. It was first used operationally during the Gulf oil spill. It was providing maps with information merged with partnering local, state, federal, private sector, and nonprofit entities at all levels to help with resource allocation. You can understand the needs for these kinds of things at crises of that kind of magnitude. In 2012, as a direct result of a science technology pilot in the Pacific Northwest, the state of Oregon used it to coordinate response to the devastating winter storms in the region. Virtual USA was used during the last presidential inauguration to coordinate local, state, and federal resources and response activities. So most recently, Virtual USA has been used in numerous exercises nationally and internationally. This was including in this month's Central United States Earthquake Consortium, CUSAC, and it's the largest ever of its kind with 20 states actually participating in this. And what I learned earlier is this is an exercise to exercise our capabilities in case of a devastating earthquake. In coordination with these efforts, we created the Next Generation Incident Command System, which is a collaborative online incident map capability, so it's essentially a geospatial map, right, which improves situational awareness for first responders in the field. Any credentialed responders can access and mark up the map, they can add data, or type the message on the whiteboard. More than 3,000 first responders from across more than 250 organizations have been trained to use this tool. It has been used for more than 300 live operational incidents since its inception in 2010. And this is including wildland fires, floods, search and rescue, and special events. Most recently, it was used operationally by California Fire to coordinate our response to the wildfire in Yosemite. And that's the third largest wildfire in California's history. NICS, or the Incident Command System I was talking about, was also used by responders at the 2014 Boston Marathon to coordinate hazardous material planning and response. In response to requirements directly from the community, we've also created smartphone apps. And these are to assist with information access and sharing. The First Responder Support Tool, or FIRST, is a bomb response smartphone app that provides first responders with immediate on-site access to critical bomb response information. So, for example, and there's also hazmat incident information as well. So first responders can access this information. They can use the app to better conduct evacuations from improvised explosive devices or IEDs, as well as spills, and share incident data with other members and external information systems. It's fully commercialized. It's available for purchase on both iTunes and Google Play, so regardless whether you're iOS or Android, you can get a copy of this. It's also listed on the authorized equipment list, enabling responders to use grant funding to purchase the app for their agency. To date, it's been purchased by more than 5,000 users. S&T is working with the university community on an app that enables improved information sharing between the agriculture industry and government, and in turn improve business continuity during animal disease incidents. This is called AgConnect. And AgConnect is a suite of pluggable mobile and web-based desktop applications that provide access to data in an actionable context. Through user-defined and access-controlled common operating pictures, it's currently being used and tested in 15 states and over 60 laboratories nationwide. Participants in our pilots have included public sector officials and private sector representatives, such as veterinarians and producers of all species. Mobile applications are available for free download to first responders immediately through the Apple's iTunes Store. At S&T, we're also thinking through social media. We're facilitating the Responders Community Virtual Social Media Working Group as an effort to help provide you with the latest information on how to best use social media tools to share info and manage response. That's also available to you now online and several new reports and lessons learned that are documented from Hurricane Sandy. They provide insights into how you can best implement social media monitoring and management in your regions. Legislation just passed the House early this month, formalizing the group and encouraging further coordination with our industry partners. So there'll be more to come on this front. So those are just a few examples of what we're doing at S&T right now to help provide responders to make sure they get the critical information that they need when they need it. We're working hard, but there's still more to do. Moving forward, we're putting resources into improving situational awareness, decision support algorithms, and the operationalization of data. We've gone around and talked to a number of our operational components, whether it be FEMA, Customs and Border Protection, et cetera. One of the major issues they bring up with is the importance of making decisions, the importance of making decisions quickly, the importance of making decisions quickly without complete data. And these are issues we're trying to work throughout our portfolio right now. We're starting some newer projects. We're calling these Apex projects. These are large consolidated programs. Two of them that we're thinking about right now starting. One is on flooding to help FEMA be able to predict regions of flooding. And another one's on the Network Operational Center of the Future. So these are looking for technologies for better situational awareness, the fusion of information, as well as making better decisions. So these are some things we're working on in the future. We'll talk to you about some of the things we're working on now, some things in the past. We're very much looking forward to working with all of you in the future. Thanks so much.
Wow. And you know what I'm also told is Dr. Brothers is, along with Meredith, have three. They call it a triple double E, which is 3 degrees in electrical engineering. So I know I will never be working in DHS S&T. Truly brilliant work. So the next person we'll have up is the United States Deputy Chief Technology Officer and a dear friend and colleague of mine, Nick Sinai.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So just 2 months ago, we had a Energy Data Palooza. We like to have lots of data jams and data paloozas, and this was one in the energy realm. And there was a really exciting announcement that was made then, and I thought I would read it to you because we're going to get a little update on it. It says, today, a number of electric utilities and technology companies agreed to the development and use of a voluntary open standard for the publishing of power outage and restoration information. The commitment of utilities to publish their already public outage information as structured data in an easy-to-use and common format in a consistent location will make it easier for a wide set of interested parties, including first responders, public health officials, utility operations, mutual assistance efforts, and the public at large, to make use of and act upon this important information, especially during times of natural disaster or crisis. And the utilities that stood up and committed to openly publish as open data their power outage information included Duke Energy, BGE, ComEd, PECO, San Diego Gas Electric, Southern Cal Edison, and National Grid. The utility vendor iFactor Consulting announced its intent to support the standard in its software, and Google announced its intent to use open power outage data in its crisis maps and other crisis response products. And so while we can't have everyone from this coalition up on stage, I did want to recognize that we have utilities who have flown from across the country who have committed to open their power outage data for the benefit of public health, of first responders, and the public at large. So I know that you guys have flown from across the country. If we could please give a round of applause to everyone involved here. Thank you. So I'm super excited about this emerging and open collaboration, but maybe the best way to do this is to actually hear from the folks doing this. So if we could have Dave Way from National Grid and Nigel Snode from Google come up and chat.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. Certainly appreciate the time this afternoon. I'm David Way. I'm with National Grid. We're a utility in the Northeast. We serve 3.3 million electric customers and 3.4 million gas customers.
They've given us the wrong slides.
Oh, okay. And you know, one of the things we're fully committed to is this open power data collaboration initiative. We think it's really important that we work with the other utilities and all of you to make this information available. And one of the roles that I play at National Grid under our incident command structure is I serve as the system planning officer. So I've been involved in a number of major events, particularly through the last few years. And what becomes more and more important is that our key stakeholders and customers need information more than ever. When they lose their power, it has a huge impact on life day to day, and it's important that we're providing them with the information that they need. So at National Grid, as well as several other utilities, many represented here today, as Nick pointed out, we've done a lot of work on that front to make improvements and to continue to provide that critical information. We have outage websites. We put a huge effort into making sure that our customer service folks know progress that we're making associated with restoration, estimated restoration time, so that when customers call in, they can give them the right information. We provide information through texting for those that have signed up, through Twitter, et cetera. So a lot of progress has been made as it relates to communicating with customers at the utility level with our customer base. But a huge opportunity for us going forward is to make sure all the utilities are aligned and that we've got a common language and a common way that we're actually making that information available. So again, we're fully committed to it. We think there's a tremendous amount of innovation that can go along with providing that information once we get that right. And we're going to continue to work with the utilities and all of you to progress that important initiative. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Nigel.
Thanks, David. So, hello everybody. I'm really proud to be able to be up here and represent a whole pile of Googlers, as we call them, volunteers, and so a small team of professionals working on disaster response full time. And sort of partly what we're going to do is talk just very briefly about sort of the citizen side of sort of open data and this kind of resilience information. Because this morning or this afternoon I've heard a whole pile about sort of responders and how they can make use of this information, and we talked about that this morning, which is really critical information for healthcare and other providers. But it's also really important for citizens, and part of that is I used to be a responder for close to a decade working, more than a decade I should say, working internationally and in the US. And I sort of left that work because I realized that technology was changing how citizens were empowered to take charge of their own response, their own resilience, and the demands that they were placing on, and their ability to act. Ultimately, we've seen that with the Airbnb and the other presentations. And so I'm completely thrilled to see the work that our partners and other companies are doing to really make that all true for so many citizens, to sort of basically put them at the center of their own ability to help out and to respond and to help formal responses. But ultimately, I'm at Google because people come to Google during times of crisis like at other times to find out what the heck they need to know, right? And we, and my team particularly, struggle to try and find ways to get people the information they need from official sources and from other places. And we're unique in, we're not unique, but one of the very few companies that touches basically billions of people every month on the web, and on Android phones and so forth. And so it's an incredible opportunity to help people through the tools they use every day. So
The next slide, thanks. So just a quick example of some of the things we do. This is a crisis map we built. Crisis map is our name for a mapping tool, platform, and a service. It's open source that you could download or you could run your own version on our servers. That's basically optimized for mobile viewing and just a quick and dirty mashup of lots of different types of geodata and map data. And we built it because we needed it, but we find it's useful for lots of other people as well. This is an example from Sandy, where we had a whole pile of different data mashed up together. And there's a couple of things about it that I sort of want to observe, one of which is that from a Google perspective at least, but probably for many of you operating in crises with public-facing websites, the loads can be incredible, right? This map, we estimate, was possibly the most viewed map ever, right? And if running a service that takes millions upon millions of hits every single day for mapping services is something that we're well positioned to do, but is a struggle for a lot. So a piece we're saying, whether it's us or other partners in the commercial space, we're here to partly help out, to provide the load, to have newspapers embed these tools, to be a channel and a vehicle for information, and making sure it's flexible and mobile. But also, it's possible only because of open data and some licensed data that we had there. We worked with New York City on evacuation zones a year before in Irene. That's why it's on this map. What's missing from this map is actually something that millions of users were actually coming to us to. You look at Google Trends, you see spikes in people looking for power outage information, unsurprisingly, given what happened in Lower Manhattan and states all over Jersey and so forth. Right? And that didn't work. We didn't have access to the data. It wasn't openly available. The best that we could do was to put up links to every power company's websites where they could go and find the data themselves. And people could find it if they needed it, but they couldn't find it easily where they were looking. Another final thing about this is that we've just recently added, it's in the press release, is that we've added some ability for crowdsourcing consistently on all of our maps, so that you can basically ask questions of your users or our users about what do they see. Is the gas station open, closed, got gas, is there power, yes, no, etc. And put in comments. And that's data that we can, and you can access and share. And so we've still got a lot to figure out about how to, the services C-Click Fix was talking about. There's so much commonalities about how do we make that work together. But then the next slide, just very briefly, an example of the power out. If you wonder what you can do with open data aside from make a pretty map. We have an alerting service called Public Alerts where we take alerts from official agencies around the world. We're in 7 countries, something like 22 providers right now. Hundreds of millions of alerts so far this year that we've shown to people, so to hundreds of millions of people basically, showing essential emergency information from official providers because it's in an open common format. And we're able to use our smarts to personalize it for people about where they are in context at the right time. And it works even really well. You think, okay, CMAS provides the alert that will buzz your phone, but the first thing that people do, we see when they receive one of those 90-character alerts, any guesses? They go to Google and actually search for what the heck was that message all about, right? We see this incredible spike in traffic every time there's a CMAS alert. I don't even need to receive the alert to know where the heck they've been issued, right? And we're able to provide the context, the what to do information, the maps about what's going on, the news. And we've recently launched a partnership with Twitter for showing their content in crisis zones as well. And then finally, I'm really actually excited by the fact that this is a map built by our friends at National Grid using our crisis map tool to basically explore where we're going to with this partnership on open power data. So this is an example of just overlaying the data from upstate New York, I'm pretty sure it is, right? Basically, we can take this data, show it to our users, newspapers can embed it, the public can find it, typing in their address and locations, and doing a whole pile more things that I haven't even yet imagined once this data is available in open standard format. And critically, under an open license, that it's available for us to use without fear and worry, without having to go through a process of, as we've tried many times in the middle of a crisis to try and do a licensing agreement. That doesn't work when you're trying to scramble and sign a contract in the middle of a large event. Talk to me about Hurricane Isaac one day. Okay, thank you very much everybody, and thanks for the White House for helping us host this.